All right, it's 4:20, 4:24. Let's go, mama. It's 4:20. All right.
They'll hear us anyway.
They will hear us. Let's get into this. Okay, so today these mothers are going to share their knowledge and experience with cannabis and parenting. They're going to discuss the benefits and the impact on families who choose to integrate cannabis into their lifestyle. And we're going to, as always, explore some resources available to not only parents but caregivers, because we are going to get into that discussion. The stigma associated with cannabis use during pregnancy, motherhood, and as caregivers. And I'm joined today by 2 out of 3 amazing women who were supposed to be here. One, and I'm going to tell you in a bit why she's not here, because it's so relevant to this conversation about some of the challenges of cannabis use and motherhood and caregiving. But I'm joined today by 2 lovely women who I also consider friends, Kelley Bruce and Danielle Simone Brand. So Kelley Usborne Bruce, also known as the Cannamommy, is a leading figure in the cannabis industry. As the founder and owner of Cannamommy LLC, a cannabis cultivation and manufacturing company based in Humboldt, Kelley has held 5 state cultivation permits from 2017 to 2021, and her innovative products, which provide natural pain relief during childbirth, have been featured in esteemed publications like Vogue, Parents, and NBC, competing directly against epidurals. Kelley's work is also recognized in scientific peer-reviewed research papers, contributing to the expanding of knowledge in cannabis therapeutics. Through her website and social media presence, she educates and empowers mothers about cannabis use during pregnancy, breastfeeding, and parenting. She's been included and listed among the 100 most important women in weed. Thank you, Kelley, for being here.
Thank you. Hello.
And then another one of my favorite women and mothers who uses plant medicine is Danielle Simone Brand. She is a writer, media maker, and mother who inspires other moms to live life intentionally and on their own terms. Probably with a little help from cannabis. Whether teaching yoga or meditation on Capitol Hill, authoring the book Weed Mom, or attempting to, or maybe not doing so well at living off-grid in the Colorado foothills, Danielle's mission is to inform, uplift, and occasionally challenge her audience while helping push the conversation forward. She is a master's in international peace and conflict resolution, and I can say it works, it's true, she really is a master at that. Just being around her makes you feel peaceful, and an inability to do the same thing in the same place for a long time. So she likes to move and bring peace to everyone. Her articles have appeared in numerous publications, including New York Times, Vice, The Week, Civilized, Double Blind, Scary Mommy, and What's Up Moms. And today they are both here honoring our stage for Women.Weed.Wellness at the California Cannabis Awards. So thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, so let's get into this because the bios tell us a whole lot. They really do, because if you just heard that, okay, these women have dedicated their lives to pushing this message forward around motherhood, parenting, and cannabis, but the why is not here. So I want to know from each of you, tell me, Danielle, why?
Yeah, so my why really dives into my story, my Canna origin story, as it were, my Canna superhero origin story. And that's that I used to be a skeptic. I really did not understand the plant as medicine. I didn't understand it as the wonderful tool for women's wellness that I do today. And I was kind of judgy of my partner, my longtime partner, my husband of 20 years, as of this past week, actually. Yeah.
They probably use lube.
In all the holes. And I just had to repeat it. And so, because I didn't understand it as medicine for quite a long time, it was something that, I just sort of pushed aside. Even though I was a natural medicine person, I was a plant person, I was a yogi, I was a meditator, and I still am all those things. But, cannabis and other, psychoactive plant medicines is something that I put sort of in a silo out there, over there, as something that wasn't really for me. And that changed in my mid-30s. I tell the story in my book. I fell in love with cannabis through the intellectual route, which is kind of funny. But I started as a freelance writer around that time, around 2016, 2017, writing about parenting, a lot of personal essays, things like that. And cannabis assignments came to me before I even gave a shit about it, I'll say. And as a good freelancer, I learned and I interviewed people, and I was astonished at the ways that this plant was helping women and moms. And so I learned more. I'm a researcher. I have a master's degree, as you mentioned, and so academia and diving into research is very second nature to me. And I started doing that. I started writing and interviewing folks more and more, and realizing there's so much more to this plant than I realized. And so, of course, I had to take my own little journey, which turned into a big journey. And from that first, moment of inhaling, being on my yoga mat, and really landing in my body and feeling myself in a way that I hadn't in a very long time, certainly since becoming a mother and kind of losing myself in that role for a while, I would say that cannabis brought me home to myself. And from there, I just wanted to share. I wanted to let other women, other moms know that, again, this message is echoed today. We don't have to be afraid of this plant, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the why is so important. It's what keeps driving you. And I too share that story of having been against it before and then having to change my view. And I call it being born again, because you're really passionate after you learn the truth, right? So, yeah. So, Kelley, why? Because we're going to get into this, but your topic that you really specialize in is very controversial, even within the motherhood community of cannabis. So
even in the cannabis.
Even in the cannabis, yeah. So why?
My lane is mothers, and particularly when they're pregnant and when they're in childbirth, in labor, and that period afterwards, postpartum. And the why really comes back to my own journey and my own experience in motherhood. I'm a mother of 4. And so, I've done this 2 times or 4. And when I was going through that experience the first time, I had a cesarean. So cannabis really was being used during that period to help with nausea. And I was in the state of Virginia, and it was not legal, and I was very scared. I didn't tell any of my care providers. I was consuming whatever my homie had, right? He wasn't even growing it. I literally have no idea what I was consuming at that point. But it was the only thing that would work. And I tried the prescription, and it didn't work. And I was really sick. I suffered HG, and I can never say that word, hypervetus gravidum. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. But it's essentially morning sickness that is to the level where you could lose your baby and be hospitalized due to it. And so, because you're not consuming enough nutrients to keep the pregnancy healthy and moving along. And so it's very serious. And so cannabis was the only thing that was working. And so moving forward, my second child I had in Humboldt County, California, which is very different than Northern Virginia.
Humboldt County, Northern Virginia.
And there I actually experienced a completely different thing, where I had the community surrounding me and embracing me and educating me and teaching me. And then it was legal. And this was in 2015, so it was before rec, but it was medical, so I had my 215 card. And I went into a dispensary, and I won't disclaim it, but they refused to service me because I was visually showing. And that sparked a different fire inside of me. And then just more fires always are sparking. But my why really is so that any person who is experiencing pregnancy would have the opportunity to have access that's safe and ultimately free. I don't feel that women should have to pay for medication when we're providing life back to the planet. So those are my deep
I shouldn't have to pay for medication when I'm providing life on the planet.
Soundbite.
That's right.
So those are my whys, and they're very deep rooted. And also, so those are my whys.
Well, I mean, I love that moment. There are those moments, right? It was me when I got the licensed social worker call, and I was like, "You tested me? What?" And you go into a dispensary and they decide they won't serve you because you're pregnant, which makes zero sense because you could be buying something for somebody else. But anyways, this is a perfect segue into my first question, really, for you both. And I'll start with you, Kelley, because of where you're going. And what we're seeing now are some trends. And y'all know I love numbers and stats. So here we go. Recent studies suggest that cannabis use more than doubled among pregnant women in the United States from 2010 to 2017. It's more common during the first trimester than during the second and third. And from between 2002 and 2003 and 2016 and 2017, past month cannabis use increased from 3.4% to 7% among pregnant women overall, and 5.7 to 12 during the first trimester. So we're seeing a double in use among pregnant women over 7 years. The study was over 467 women, which is significant. Now I'm curious to know, knowing these numbers and hearing like how quickly that jump happened, and knowing all the things that's happening right now in California, legalization in the US, why do you think more women are using cannabis during pregnancy?
Okay, I'm gonna answer that in two ways. One, I think that because of legalized recreation and access to medical, women are feeling more confident in using it and also more confident in sharing that they are using it. I do believe that there is a significant number of women or pregnant people who consume cannabis during pregnancy who are still scared to share that story for a variety of reasons. So I think that it's twofold. I think that having better access, both in medical and recreational situations, and then also having the confidence from women like Chia and Patty who are doing Moms Do Weed and breaking down the stigma, and other females and people who are breaking it down and sharing their experience. I think more women are hearing it and they're feeling confident and they're exploring it and they're using it and it works. I think that ultimately behind any of it is that it works and that it is a superior option to what your other options, which is the pharmaceuticals, which have actual hard evidence, which have studies that are coming out with severe abnormal deformities, including cleft palate, heart, the hole in the heart, and these are real, actual things. You still can't find that with cannabis. There's still not one cannabis study or example that I have come across, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I've been doing this for a minute, where the cannabis has caused a birth defect to either a mother or the baby, but you can't say that with the pharmaceuticals. There is population that does come, and it's hard to say causality in pregnancy because no matter what, we cannot test double blind in pregnancy. It's unethical. So you'll never ever get, it's safe, right? Even the prescription drugs and the drugs that you consume now aren't safe. They just classify them as less harmful, and the only reason they have that information is because they've been following it and seeing it over time. That's why in the 50s they prescribed certain medications. They saw, in the 70s the babies that had this is now happening, let's stop doing that. We've been using cannabis for 4,000 years. So I think that, it's because they're having better access, it's safer, people are feeling more confident, and because it works.
I second all of that. And I will add that, as the norms are changing and as normalization continues, we still have a long way to go. Like, let's not, jump too far ahead. But that is opening people's minds, and there's also a strong, I don't know if it's a resurgence. It is a resurgence because natural medicine used to be our only medicine, right? So there's a strong resurgence in an interest in natural medicines, holistic lifestyles, and self-empowerment when it comes to your own health. And so I think that's also just part of the zeitgeist, part of this sort of moment that we're in, and plant medicine is ushering helping to bring it about, as well as benefiting from people's openness.
Speaking to that openness and the moment that we're in, and women feeling, and mothers and pregnant people feeling more safe because of laws, because of education, things like information panels like this, right? Services that are available to take them through, nurses that are now consulting. there is a new level of freedom that people are feeling too. And there's an influence that those of us have who are public facing have over a larger population, those who do not live in Humboldt and have access to cannabis friendly doulas. And so I will transition with this because it speaks to why our third panelist wasn't able to be here today. So Miko Hester Perez is a global healthcare ambassador and an autism expert. And she was coming from the perspective of the Cannamom who doesn't consume cannabis, but is a caregiver for a child who requires cannabis for his condition. And Joey, her son, is no longer with us, but she used cannabis and along with doctors and fought the system and did all of these things at age 3 when he was told he would have less than a year to live. She then, because of the medications he was on, she then turned to cannabis and he lived until 19. And so she has been, yes, shout out to Miko and Joey. She has been an ambassador ever since and couldn't be here today because last week she was called to be an advocate in court for a mother who is a caregiver caring for her autistic child, gave him a credible approved product that a doctor suggested would work. It was working. And she's in court because she failed to get a caregiver's permit. So these details, they really are important. And, you know, that speaks to this. How important it is that we properly educate, that the nuances are mentioned. You know, use CBD for autism can't be the beginning and end of that ad. That is not the answer. So I want to move into that discussion about, you know, really protecting our children and the law and how it comes for us sometimes. A lot of the time, let me say. So the Supreme Court of Arizona, Lindsay Rigdale is a mother from Arizona, and she was charged with child abuse and neglect after using cannabis to manage her morning sickness during pregnancy. She went all the way to the Supreme Court. They declined her appeal, which allowed for a registry to be developed. Okay, so this is how like these little things can just change entire state policy. A 3-judge panel found Ridgedale's cannabis use was lawful and did not amount to child neglect after she took it all the way to the Supreme Court. So it set a higher standard for DCFS. If you want to claim neglect when a woman is using cannabis during pregnancy. We've seen the same thing happen in California recently with legislation. In 2024, this goes into effect where it must be treated by DCFS on the same scale as alcohol use. You cannot just because a mother is using cannabis go in with a case. There have to be other accompanying factors. And so this case in particular is of national importance because other states are now doing this, realizing the importance of welfare, child services, cannabis as we legalize and its applications on families and its impact on families. So how do you think, knowing this, we can use this case to help other states create sensible programming around cannabis use in pregnancy? And in addition to that, how can we be more responsible with our own programming as those who have influence in protecting children?
Okay, I'll take the pregnancy side and I'll let you go with the more motherhood side. Well, this is like the hardest question, right? Because it's almost like not even about the cannabis, kind of. The cannabis is almost a symptom of a bigger issue, which is women or female identifying persons autonomy during a pregnancy. And so I think what cannabis is doing again is bridging a conversation and really opening up an opportunity for us to look back and say, yeah, I mean, we're totally okay sticking a giant needle in the lumbar part of her spine to make her whole lower body go numb, but she cannot put on a transdermal cannabis patch. Oh, no. I mean, I think that when you look back at that and you look at the doctor and you're like, but that's okay, it becomes, oh, well, we really do need to look at this, right? And more so, the medical community is there to help, not harm. And if you look at statistics in pregnancy and birth just without cannabis, there's a big issue there already. And I mean, we can talk about that if you want.
I was going to say, particularly in communities of color, we're looking at about a 49% death rate on the table when you're having a child.
Right. And then you look at the number of people who are consuming cannabis in pregnancy versus the number of people who are getting reported to the Child Protective Services. And I can go through and have a pregnancy using cannabis, talking open, being on Vogue, but then my counterpart in Oregon is using CBD, doesn't look like me, and she's harassed up and down. And so there's a bigger conversation that has to be had. And so I think that this is where it kind of starts, right? Where we fight back and we say, no, like, you cannot tell me what options I can legally choose. You've already told me that in this state, I'm going to use California because that's where I'm at right now. In the state of California, if I'm 21, I am allowed to consume cannabis. And if I also have my medical card, then it becomes none of your business how I'm deciding to manage the pregnancy and the life that I'm creating. And furthermore, it then protects us to have a better educated conversation with our potential work care providers. A lot of the doctors aren't even educated, and OBGYNs aren't educated in, it's like a 2-week blurb in their medical exam. So yeah, so I think how can we create sensible legislation, conversation, get down there, talk to them, tell them. The legislators have no idea unless you are communicating with them. This is perfect. Being here at the state fair, talking to everybody about it, bringing awareness to it, and yeah, just making sure that really women have the ability to utilize the medicines that they are legally allowed to have.
And I heard you say something too that's sensible. It is to provide relevant examples. Make those comparisons. So you want to stick a needle in my spine, but I can't put a patch on. I mean, that hit for a lot of people. I saw it.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a really easily comprehensible concept to see how ridiculous it is.
And I want to add on to that too. Smoking, we have done a lot of anecdotal information and collected data coming through the clinic, and the inhalation is the #1 form used to receive the benefit for nausea symptoms specifically. But we do know that inhaling smoke of any type is not ideal for a growing baby because it does restrict oxygen. So I think that there is, we need to be responsible and we need to be able to have that conversation, and it really comes down to risk benefit. In a panel earlier, someone had mentioned mindfulness as to like the first thing to think about before consuming cannabis, and that really hit a nerve too. Marissa is one of the nurses that works in our clinic. Nurse Marissa, she's awesome. She's out in Massachusetts, and she always practices that. Right? Well, what is the symptom that you're specifically trying to medicate or mediate, and what can you do before that? Diet, exercise, stretching, things like that, and then bring cannabis in before you bring in the pharmaceuticals, right? So it's not just like you're depressed, here, smoke some weed. And I'm not judging or saying that. I'm just saying the conversation really has to become more educated, and we have to have the ability to have that conversation without having the fear of having a little check in your medical chart that says, now when you have your baby, we're going to screen your urine and we're going to do all these things, and essentially build a wall between the provider and the patient. And so I think that's what we need to break down, that wall, or build a bridge.
Absolutely, yes. Conversations with legislators, educational resources like the Holistic Cannabis Institute. Dr. Bonnie Goldstein, she educates practitioners, doctors, nurses, right? So that you have an informed community of teachers and leaders, and so we can have those conversations and feel safe. I want to expand the question for you, Danielle, and because you have children, you and I have children the same age. We've got the preteens, and they are watching us, and they understand, and the school is talking to them about it already, and so they're getting different opinions that may vary from what we have been telling them. We may or may not be in a legal state, and so you have to teach different protections. So how do you, as a mother, advocate for your child's access, advocate for your own access, while at the same time knowing that this is something that could put you and your family at risk of legal complications? How do you balance that, and what does that look like in your world?
Yeah, that's an important question. So as we know, we live in this country where there's a huge patchwork, a really diverse patchwork of cannabis laws, right, and access. So here in California, there's a lot of access, although not in every jurisdiction, right? We know that there's still quite a long ways to go. But there are plenty of places where there's really hardly, any access, no legal access at all. So there are so many factors to consider when it comes to, being a Cannamom, whether you're advocating for your own child or whether you're advocating for, your access, your usage. So, I think there's just no one-size-fits-all answer to that question. Where you live, your job, unfortunately, your skin color makes a big difference in terms of the way, becoming or, coming out as a Cannamom is perceived, right? And then we all know that the drug war has been, very unjustly, perpetrated against people of color. And so, the fact remains that it is incredibly important to advocate, and yet I do advocate a little bit of caution for moms, right? You got to know your situation. Our children are our, most important thing, right? We don't want to risk our, our relationship with them, our custody of our children. That's like a hard thing to say, but that's a real part of this conversation, right? So,
It's
protecting
very real.
yourself.
I mean, yeah, we don't want to lose custody of our children.
Right. And the fact that we have to, even worry about that for using a plant that our ancestors used, we all know the travesty of that. But here we are.
They legally have said that you can consume.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, depends so much on one's own situation. I believe that if it feels right, and I think that the plant makes advocates of us. And so many of us are drawn to it, even if we're a little bit afraid, even if we're a little bit, worried about even what our close family will think, much less the wide world and, the internets. But taking these steps out and doing it together in community, I think, and supporting one another, having one another's backs, having these conversations, starting these advocacy organizations, and truly, being there for other Canna women, Canna moms. That's how we move this forward. So step by step, arms together.
Yes, that's how we do it as a community, locked arm in arm. And you two have built.
There's still a lot of work to do, in destigmatizing and normalizing and showing ourselves as cannabis consumers who are moms, who are, who are functioning really well, who are much healthier than we were before cannabis came into our lives. I think, sharing these stories over and over again and, and adding to the body of knowledge that we have, it's only pushing us forward.
Yeah, and providing
I don't want to interrupt you.
I love it. No, celebrate. That's how we know that this is what you want to know. That's how we know that, yes, let's talk more about that. And yeah, I heard that. So please, thank you, clap. Because this is bravery, right? Putting ourselves out here publicly to discuss this, our use as mothers with children at home. We all have to work to protect our children. And how do we do that? How do we be advocates? How do we be organizers? How do we fight for this, knowing and living with that fear? Because that's what you said. It's sometimes the question is just like, is it okay? Yeah. Is it okay for me to do this? And I think that's very real and authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. And with my book, I wanted to share information, and it's a how-to, it's a guide, but it's really also a permission slip, right? A validation that cannabis actually is really helpful for women's bodies, and during the motherhood journey can give us so much, and that you don't have to be afraid or ashamed. I think that's a big part of it. And you asked, actually, you asked briefly, you asked earlier, who I interviewed, how many people I interviewed, what kind of questions I asked for the book. And, I cast a really wide net in terms of interviewing Canna moms from all over the country, lots of different backgrounds, lots of different ages, number of kids. And, I asked the questions like, why do you consume, and how does it help you? And what are the effects, and what is your, how does your family receive it, and how do you talk to your children about it, and how do you have these conversations with your partner and your community? The whole cultural context around this changing, conversation around weed, around cannabis is fascinating to me, and I think that we just have to keep having these conversations so that, things change.
So earlier you had the fan and it said respect the ritual, and I want to say that motherhood in general was never meant to be alone. We were never meant to do this isolated, single, running, doing everything, right? We're doing it because like we are awesome, but that wasn't really the way it was meant to do it. And more so, we were supposed to have a close tribe or community. And if you think about cannabis, it is a social ritual moment. And I think that there is some synergy between motherhood and cannabis in the fact that we've lost the place where we go down and we're cleaning the clothing down at the river, or we're out planting and gathering and hunting and stuff like that. We don't have that, right? We're sitting in cubes, isolated. COVID came, we're even more isolated. We're getting better, but cannabis is a ritual connecting situation, and I think that mothers are looking and longing and needing a place to connect. And whether they find that through their wine group, through their book group, or through their canna group, they're finding it. And what I think the Cannamom movement, which is so cool about it, is that we're just another option. And it's a really cool option because you don't have a wine system, right?
You have an endocannabinoid system.
So, I think that we're just all finding our way back to the mother of the mothers. So.
Yes, the mother of the mothers. Community, having each other, coming together, education, talking to legislators, willingness to use our voice, educating ourselves, contributing to studies, whether they be small or large. I mean, these are all the ways that we push reform forward. I've been really passionate about working with women and parents because once you assume that responsibility of another person's life and you realize that that's like your heart walking around outside of your body, your sense of responsibility in the world drastically increases. And so voting becomes more of a responsibility, right? Policy around my community and who gets to live on the streets that my children walk on. And so there's this increased sense of awareness, and it's heightened tremendously about protecting our kids, protecting ourselves. And so that's when like the whys come and the passion comes, because now I have somebody else to be fighting for. And that's why I feel so strongly about talking with kids about cannabis, to demystify plant medicine so we can undo the harms, reverse them, and change the future, change the narrative, remember, not rewrite it, because we've been knowing this. So, these conversations are intense. I mean, I feel like we could go on all day because there are so many things to discuss in the range of parenting, caregiving, and motherhood. We didn't even get into postpartum, but we're going to save that for the next Women.Weed.Wellness event.
There you go.
I want to thank you ladies again, your courage to get up on this stage, because I'm going to break the internet with this, and talk about this, and continue to write about it, and work in this space, and push this needle forward. I'm grateful to you. I'm humbled to work alongside you and to be in the Cannamom gang. Also, though, you're welcome to join the K party if you'd like to. I am taking members.
I'm trying to find the all whole party.
Yes,
Jamaica.
Kelley,
I heard somewhere down in Jamaica. I'm about to go there.
Let's go.
Get all the holes. Bring that
Kelley.
lube.
We're coming to Coral Cove with all the holes.
With the lube.
Kelley, Usborne, Bruce, Danielle, Simone, Brand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, California State
Thanks,
Fair.
everybody.
Okay, so this day has been amazing, y'all. I'm gonna give everyone a 30-minute break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna do something really special. We're gonna have the inaugural Women, Weed, and Wellness Recognition Awards, and we're gonna give awards and honor, spotlight, highlight, embrace, hug, and thank 3 really dynamic women in this space. California Educator of the Year, California Thought Mother of the Year, and California Legacy Woman. So come back here in 30 minutes.
You got a plant.
Okay. This day went fast. It really did.
It does. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Every day has just melted into the next for us.